that he might save your life. Praise the Lord, everyone. Are you happy to be in the house of the Lord one more time? Again, I am thankful for each and every one of you who are here on tonight. God has been good to us, and I just have some written words that I will read on tonight because I believe it is so important as we venture, as we do this one venture that we've never done before, which is a town hall that deals with strategic voting. And people say, well, what is that? What is strategic voting? And I do want to welcome you to this town hall for strategic voting, which is sponsored by the Loius, Carr, and Donald and Elizabeth Thompson Foundation. Now, I want you to know that it is a pleasure to welcome you and to thank all of our panelists who will be introduced in a few minutes for their participation. Our purpose tonight is to educate, to inform, and to encourage everyone to vote. That is our purpose. But at the same time, we want to say that we don't want you to vote your grievance, but vote your best interest. It is our interest, and our primary interest is not in our present, but in our future. And so we strategically vote so that our children and our children's children and their interests and those who are not yet born are walking into a society that is better than the society that we walked in. Why is voting this year so important? Some say it's about freedom and democracy. Others say it is about civil rights and civil liberties. That voting is about racial equality and not returning to a time of Jim Crow laws where black people were subjugated as second-class citizens, even though our contributions to America have been great in all aspects of American society. The truth of the matter is that we're voting because of all of the above. And there are many reasons for black people to be skeptical of political processes, and everyone has their own grievances, but not voting in today's climate would be tragic for you and for everyone you care about. Not voting the strategic interests of the black community would be devastating. The essence of strategic voting is to leverage the electoral process to address the systemic issues within our society and to totally reject the interests of those that support Project 2025. We recognize that this election marks a turning point for the continued freedom of black people. Our willingness to vote and to vote our present and future interests will prevent the return to a time of great poverty, isolation, prohibitions, and social and mental enslavement. By engaging in informed, strategic, and collective voting practices, black people can influence election outcomes, promote political challenge, and create a strong, resilient, and thriving community that values unity, collaboration, empowerment, mutual support, social justice, and transformation. It must be noted that our sponsors and the church are not endorsing any candidate. Even though you may hear different names, you may hear about Vice President Harris. You may hear the name Mr. Trump. Our mission is to inform and educate our congregation and the listening audience on the issues that must be considered for you to vote. And now I would like to present to you our moderator for the evening, Mr. Roland Martin.
I don't know how we're supposed to get, well, anyway, I'm just going to walk over here, all right. Just step on over. All right, Chicago, how y'all doing? Glad to be back here. I, of course, spent 6 years here, WVON Radio, running the Chicago Defender. So it is good to be back, to seeing everyone here for this fantastic conversation. And so we're going to get this thing started. So let's go ahead and bring out all of our panelists right now. We've got a great lineup of folks, and so they got some great things to say. And so we're going to make sure that we don't actually bore you. If any of y'all watch Roland Martin Unfiltered, my Black Star Network, y'all know we don't do boring conversations. We keep it real, keep it black, and this conversation is going to be the same. First up, you know him. You see he's been on the scene for so many years. He, of course, was trained under Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. Put your hands together. The president of the National Action Network, host of Politics Nation on MSNBC, Reverend Al Sharpton. Next up, yeah, come on, there you go. Here you go. Next up, Morgan Elise Johnson. She's a filmmaker and publisher who co-founded the Triibe, a digital publication and media company that is reshaping the narrative of Black Chicago. Give it up for Morgan. Next up is the accomplished financial strategist, entrepreneur, talk show host on WVON Radio. He also is a principal with J-Co Strategies. And I told him, only because Bishop Brazier allowed it, I will allow a Kappa to be on this panel. Rufus Williams. He know Alphas run the show. All right. Constance Jones, she's the CEO of Noble Schools, the largest charter school organization in Illinois, overseeing the strategy, operations, and school performance of an organization of more than 12,700 students and 1,500 staff across across 18 campuses. Put your hands together for Constance Jones. Our next guest just rolled up on us backstage. Looked like he just came from a picnic. Matt McGill, radio talk show host, WVON Radio 1600. And he decided to come out here with his own sweat rag. Okay, all right. He actually wore pants. All right. Last but certainly not least is an entrepreneur, publisher of Indigo magazine. She's a talk show host for the Emmy Award-nominated Indigo Studios. Put your hands together for Hermene Hartman. Yeah, don't worry about it. I changed the rules. Don't worry about it. Yeah. I don't sit down when I do this here, so we're gonna move this back. So, and the reason I don't sit down, because when some folk talk too long, you just sort of step in and your presence says, I need you to be quiet so we can move on. Let's go ahead and get this thing started. Significant black turnout in 2008, yet in all of the subsequent elections, we've seen black turnout drop since the initial election of President Obama in 2008. What we're also seeing are big changes demographic-wise, where you have voters who are really under the age of 55 who don't self-identify as Democrat, but they might lean Democrat in terms of how they vote. So, Reverend Sharpton, I want to start with you. How do we get our folks to understand that the demographics of our community have changed, and so how we communicate to black voters has to change than how we used to operate 30, 40 years ago? All right. It's a little low. Hold on. Matt, hold on 1 second. They plug you back in? Yeah, because we were talking backstage, and so I don't believe in that thing where they say, oh, we had a microphone off. Nah, we don't trust that. So the best way to have no hot mic situation is unplug the microphone. All right, you're good now. We were talking, I was like, hold on, unplug. Go ahead, we can keep going. We're not gonna happen.
Let me first say, I think that we all are indebted to Bishop Brady and bringing us together. Because there needs to be town hall like this all over the country. And Louis Carr for doing this. And Roland for coming in and Roland. Roland's importance is that we need black-owned media that understand. I'm answering your question before you come and stand in front of us. We need black-owned media that's part of our community that understands the changing demographics because they live it. We have too many blacks that are acting black, imitating whites acting black. Blacks that act black and blacks that are imitating whites imitating blacks. That's 2 steps away from real blackness. And we need real black folks that are going to deal with the messaging. So what has happened in the last 30 years or 25 years that you mentioned, Lord, is that the people that are doing the black campaign do not have a real connection to the black community. So they don't know how to talk to us. They're talking for people they never talk to. And that's why when I started on Radio 1 and VON, and even later they gave me the MSNBC show, people said, well, you're not going to do a show 5 days a week. I said, no, I got to talk to black folks if I'm going to talk about them or talk for them. I'll do that on MSNBC. So you've got too many people that are talking for us that don't understand it. Yes, there's been a shift. And we've got to deal with the shift from not only social media and the impact on our young people, but there's some things that have not changed, but the way we communicate has changed. They run away from the black church. No matter what you say, the largest gathering of black folks on a weekly basis is still the black church. So whether the numbers may have gone down, the other numbers have not gone up. Secondly, everybody that can do a song does not necessarily mean they can move voters. So they go out and get entertainers. And I told an entertainer, you may have 5,000 people at your concert, I may have 1,000 at my rally, but 90% of my rally votes maybe 5% of your concert. So they don't know where the voters are. And then the process, something you and I were talking about, how you register voters, talk about early voting, and the method that needs to be made. And my last point on that is we cannot reduce voting to a personality of business.
Right.
Whose side are you on, Harris or Trump? The question is not whether you're on Harris' side or Trump's side. The question is who's on our side.
Yeah. I mean, 2022, I was in Georgia helping my alpha brother Warnock get reelected to the United States Senate. And I was interviewing a sister who owned a cafe. And everybody kept talking about reproductive rights. And the sister said, she said, listen, that's important to me. She said, but I'm also a business owner. I care about corporate taxes. So she said, I'm listening to Walker and Warnock. And some of the folks who were there, they were shocked and stunned. So I had to explain to them that when we talk about black entrepreneurs, more black businesses, we then are looking at issues different from our parents were looking at, because it's a whole different focus when you own a business as opposed to when you're working for somebody. That's an example of what I'm talking about, how we have to be approaching our politics differently because the black voter is a different voter in 2024 than they were in 1984 or 74 or 64.
So, first of all, just to piggyback off of what Reverend Sharpton said, we in no way, shape, form, or fashion are monolithic. You can talk about reproductive rights and be small business too. That ain't either or. That's both and then some. For no reason should a politician be in our beds. Politics kiss babies, they don't have babies. And so there is a great divide. Every woman of childbearing age needs to pay close attention to this, reproductive rights, because it will affect you. You may want to have an abortion and you may not. You may want to get pregnant and you may not. These are choices that women make based on a lot of things, but politicians should have nothing to do with it. It is a husband's decision and it is a doctor's decision, period. What we do is we talk about politics from the voting aspect. That is largely our conversation because we've had to struggle for it. It wasn't given to us. We had to fight for it. We had to march for it. We got lynched for it. We got houses burned down for it, on and on and on. But we are now at the point where we also need to talk about the economics of the politics.
Right.
That's important too. So women are not monolithic. Small business owner, house owner, raising children, we are all of that. And in our community, we are more of that as women than we care to be.
But Matt, here's what's interesting, because when we talk about just that particular issue, it's often talked about through the prism of a woman's perspective. In Ohio, when they had the ballot initiative, the group that voted the highest was black men. Oh, you ought to know that. When they had the ballot initiative in Ohio, black men voted at a higher rate than any other group. And folks were mesmerized by that because what they didn't understand is the problem is that even that conversation has been framed to reproductive rights when actually it's a privacy issue. And so, again, it's a perfect example of how we have to understand you can't just look at an issue and then go, well, they're going to look at it this way, me going to look at it this way. No, you have to treat the black voter in a different way now than you've ever done before because it's a totally different fragmented perspective.
Well, I mean, I think if you look at some of the data that we've been hearing, it's that black men are trending toward President Trump. We know what black women did for the Democratic Party in 2020, delivered Georgia, and we saw that representation come out real strong. I think one of our issues is we have to figure out how being black first is even more important than us being a black man or a black woman, right? See, you know, in black history, you know, we're always separating ourselves from each other. I say this on my show all the time, you know. It's always you're either a Booker T black person or a W.E.B. black person, you know. You're either a Dr. King or a Malcolm X black person. You know, we separate. You either a Prince or a Michael Jackson. Who you with? We always find a reason, you know, LeBron or Michael Jordan. We're trying to separate ourselves instead of figuring out the reasons why we've been successful when we're together. When black people get fired up, we win. Obama, we win, right? Going against Trump in 2020.
Well,
we
actually,
win.
according to pollster Terrence Woodbury, when he's doing his focus groups, when you tell a black voter that your vote could make the difference, they have a higher likelihood of voting than just saying vote.
And what election is going to make more of a difference? Roland, you, Reverend Sharpton, everybody knows. They tell us 40,000 votes are going to make a difference in 4 states. 2 of those states we know, Wisconsin and Michigan, have a large black population, have large black metropolitan.
Yeah, but the problem, you look at Milwaukee, 2022, 50,000 fewer people voted in Milwaukee in that U.S. Senate race than they did in 2020.
Exactly.
Mandela Barnes, Lieutenant Governor brother, lost by 26,000 votes.
Should have been.
Had those 50,000 people in Milwaukee voted, he's a United States Senator and not MAGA Ron Johnson.
Absolutely.
But that's also incumbent upon you have to target those voters. You can't assume that they are going to turn out. And that's one of the things, Constance, I want to go to you. When Andrew Gillum ran in Florida, when he lost to Ron DeSantis, he lost by 30,000 votes. 18% of black women voted for Ron DeSantis, and people are like, oh my God, and black women hate Republican Party more than anybody else. That's not me, that's literally what the Republican National Committee told me in a meeting with Chairman Reince Priebus. But what they overlooked was charter schools. They overlooked the fact that those black mothers, they didn't care about a debate between teachers, union, and anything else. They wanted their kid educated, and that was an overlooked issue in Florida. So again, a prime example, you have to be paying attention to where black voters are, and don't just assume that they say charter schools are irrelevant, opportunity scholarships don't matter. That is a growing issue in black communities.
Absolutely. So, Roland, I am so inspired by this conversation because as an
I don't think
Your mic isn't on.
Now, I ain't unplug you, so.
I know, I'm not sure how that happened.
Okay, you got it turned up?
Okay, is it better now?
Still
No?
a little low.
All right, testing. Here we go. Y'all can hear me? All right, awesome. Okay, thank you so much. Oh. It just went away?
There you go, there it is, there it is.
We're there. Thank you all so much. So I'm so inspired.
I'm gonna
All
let
right,
you.
sound man, sound woman, you're gonna get cussed out in church.
All right,
So he's trying to make sure we don't have the feedback. So go ahead, do it. Give us a 5 count.
all right, testing. 1, 2, 3.
Hold up, keep going up.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Testing. 1, 2, 3. Testing. 1, 2, 3.
Hold up, take it back up.
Testing. 1, 2, 3.
Hey, you want to use my mic? I come
Take
over
it back
there.
up.
Hey.
Okay, I appreciate you.
Yes. Oh, there you go.
All right. Testing. Okay.
Hold on, where's your pack? Y'all switch.
Yeah, it's here. So.
Oh, you got it here.
Yeah, it's here.
All right, got it.
Okay.
All right,
So, how about this? I'll
hold
start
on,
off
we got it.
with- Great. Thank you.
That's better.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can y'all hear me now?
Now we got you.
All right. We good? Testing.
Hold it a certain way, turn this way, turn this way.
All right, testing, 1, 2, 3, testing. All right, good. All right, we're back in business. All right, how y'all doing? Okay, good. I'm really inspired by all of this conversation today because it reminds me of the importance as an educator, as a leader, of developing critical thinkers. Like all of the things that are being discussed here today that are happening in Florida or happen in Florida and Georgia and policy and reproductive rights, like we need students and young adults to be able to process this information and to make informed decisions. You know, I tell folks all the time that we don't teach our kids like what to believe, but we teach them how to process and how to interpret what they're hearing and make informed decisions. And, we have to make sure that as much as we're teaching our students and young adults, the importance of marching in the streets, they also need to know how to march to the polls. Like, both need to be true. You can't do one and do and not do the other and expect for there to be real change within our communities. So, with regard to the parents in Florida and regard to charter parents, whether you're chartered or you go to a private school, whatever, we just need to make sure that we're empowering and uplifting parent voice. That is what's most important in our communities, is that we are listening to the folks we serve and that we're honoring their perspectives and the change that they want to see.
Morgan, the point that Constance just made there in terms of, again, driving folks to the polls, but you can't drive someone to the polls if they believe that there's no purpose in it. If you look at numbers, the reality is that, and this is true among all voters, but especially true among black people, the group that votes the highest is 65 plus. You talk to somebody 65 plus, you phone bank, they like, baby, when the National Coalition of Black Civic Participation, they were doing a phone banking, they called this sister, she was 87, she says, listen, y'all need to call somebody else. My son is picking me up at this time, taking me to the polls and bringing me back home. She had a plan already mapped out. Then the next group is 55, 64. Then the next group, you go down. The reality is the lowest voting group in America, black or otherwise, is 1835, which also happens to be the largest block of voters. So what I tell millennials and Gen Z, don't complain about all these old folk running stuff. They vote. How do you communicate that, the issues, to millennial and Gen Z folks who are reading the Tribe, to get them to understand that you can't complain about something if you check out of a process? Speak to that.
Thank you so much for that question. The Tribe, we do reach primarily millennials and Gen Z, and we're able to break down topics like politics in a way that they can understand. I think that we have to look at the way that this country and our city has divested from education. A Democrat, Rahm Emanuel, is the one who closed down 50 schools, and a lot of kids were lost in the system. So, and then we look at young voters and say that they're not involved when a lot of them are struggling to read and write. They don't understand the role that government plays in our lives. So we really have to do that outreach, but it starts with education and civic engagement and getting them involved early so that they understand the role that government plays in their lives.
Rufus, you now host the morning show on WVON radio, and I remember when I was hosting that show, I brought you on for a series of, let's just say they were frank conversations. You were, of course, over the school system then. You're now on this side here. Talk about how we have to do better in connecting the dots for listeners, viewers, and readers, so they understand how all of these things are impacted. So who's in the White House, who's the United States Senator, who's in Congress, who's the governor, who's the state rep, state senator, county, city, school board, how all of these roles directly impact public policy in our community.
I appreciate that question, Roland. And I didn't notice the fact that I'm a Kappa and you're an Alpha, that I was the last one you called on. I wouldn't need to comment on that.
No, I mean, I was saving, in your mind, the best for last. Y'all, we do this all the time, so don't even worry about it.
You know, Roland, it's been an interesting process in going through this every morning, where I do what you did, which is to come on and try to give good information to our people. And what I'm learning from there, and what I learned even from outside of there, and in the last week having had some opportunity to talk to some young people, is that there's a gap in information between us and them. I want to ask, first of all, thank you all for coming out. There were a whole lot of places you all could have been. Thank you all for being here this evening. Let me ask a question of you all. Anybody who's heard of Project 2025, raise your hand. Everybody's hand is up, just about. What's interesting is the young people that I talked to last week were not familiar with Project 2025. And so when I mentioned it to them, they immediately went to their phones to find out, but I had to mention it to them. And so what was clear to me is that they're getting their information, as Reverend Sharpton pointed out, there has to be a credible source for them to get information from. And that credible source so often is you. Because we do have a dearth of black media. So thrilled that WVON exists, because we can come on and talk to each other, irrespective of who else is listening. Within our schools and within the school structure, there are some gaps. The schools do a lot of things. The question is, what are the schools supposed to do? And we asked that question when I was there. What is the role of education? What is the role of Chicago Public Schools? What is it that we're supposed to do? It was to educate, inspire, and transform is what we came to. Educate, inspire, and transform. But when we get to the nuts of things like what we're dealing with now in terms of the variables in society, the differences in the branches of government, given all that's going on and all the different places in which they get information, many of which are not verifiable. TikTok is not a verifiable place to get information. But this is where many of them are getting it from. And if they see something that's interesting, then they share it. And all this bad information gets shared amongst all of them, which is really where we, knowledgeable, have to step in and do that. We've got to put our arms around young folks beyond what's in the schools and help them to understand and appreciate what these things are. They've got to know what's at stake, because the things that we do are things that are truly beneficial for them, more so than what's beneficial for us.
All right, so everybody had an opportunity to talk. So from this point forward, if you want to make a comment, just let me know, just jump in. So no need to do the sort of sprinkler deal here. But I'm going to start this round with Reverend Sharpton on that particular point. Misinformation is huge. In 2016, the largest Black Lives Matter Facebook page was a Russian troll farm. We know for a fact, North Korea, Iran, others, how they've been targeting African Americans. For African Americans, there's a distrust of government because of a variety of reasons that have all been well earned. And so to the point Rufus just made, I see us having to operate in the capacity of feeding, I guess that example of Elijah Muhammad with Malcolm saying, you can give him a dirty glass of water, or you can give him a clean glass of water. We have to be fixated on rooting out disinformation. I tell this story, my mom posted something in our family chat, and I was like, Mama, don't you post nothing else in the family chat unless you ask me first. And I know, and again, but part of the problem of a lot of us, man, I ain't checking my mama like that, but mama was putting some wrong information out. That happens, and the reality is a lot of our folks, they see something on Facebook, it looks credible, then they spread it, not realizing the moment it goes to that group chat, boom, it's out. So talk about, again, how we have to take ownership of driving real, clean, factual information to our people and stopping the lie the moment it comes upon us.
No, I think that's vital, particularly if we're going to, as she addressed, Gen Z and all, because part of the problem is they're getting some misinformation or being told that is not going to solve anything, voting is not going to matter.
The data shows that they are getting their information largely from Instagram and TikTok.
That's right.
Go ahead.
And they need to know who owns these things and what the agenda is. And I don't think we do enough of supporting and telling our community, particularly our young people, to support those independent, particularly Black-owned sources that will have a long track record. When I grew up, I couldn't wait for Wednesdays to see what Jet Magazine had out, or Ebony every month, or on and on and on. You don't have that anymore, and we've allowed that to go unchecked. Like I was saying to you, I read some of the youth department in Nash Action, they read with me, brought some of the students over from the Palestinian movement. And I said, let's talk. I've been to Palestine, I met with Yasser Arafat. They said, well, we want you to come do this, that, and other. I said, I support that, but let me ask you two questions. They said, what? I said, y'all have been in front of these colleges at that time for 30 days. Who's paying for the tents? They said, what do you mean? I said, I do marches. I know how much tents cost. A whole lot of money. I done 2-day marches in Washington, cost me $50,000. You kids ain't paying for them tents. Who's paying for the tents? And they looked for each other and said, I don't know. I said, well, then answer the second question. And I'll go out there and lay in a tent with you if you Nancy. Why are y'all all disrupting and marching on Biden and Harris, and nobody's marched on Trump? Trump is an open ally of Netanyahu. Why ain't y'all mad at him? He had a rally in the Bronx, and y'all didn't say nothing.
Right.
Yeah,
go ahead.
People are protesting Democrats because those are the candidates who they actually voted for. So they're looking to hold the public officials who they voted for to represent their morals
But
values.
a lot of them that are in these protests ain't voted for nobody. A lot of them are from Palestine, they didn't vote for anybody.
I I would have to disagree. I'll speak on behalf of the Chicago organizing community that have been doing intergenerational organizing, like CAA, RPR, Frank Chapman, that whole group. These are active civic engagement champions, really.
And they are. I know who you're talking about. But I know that there are some that are manipulating, just like they did us with Black Lives Matter, and came in, and the leaders of Black Lives Matter worked with us with George Floyd. Some other forces get people on the side that distort what they're about. The groups you're talking about are credible groups.
In fact, here's to Reverend Sharpton's point. In fact, when they had the protest at Columbia,
right,
when they stormed the building, there was a group of us in the media chat. The first question was, who is the group? What we found out was the student leader said, we don't know who that was.
That's all I'm saying.
So this is where we have to, so you're right.
Yeah, there's always infiltrators,
Right,
but we
right.
can't like distract from what the demands
No.
are.
But here's what happens though. The major fire that was started in Minneapolis, that was blamed on black people, that was actually an infiltrator.
That's right.
But what happens is, media takes that and goes, Black Lives Matter had a city on fire. So to Reverend's point, we have to be always mindful of who are the folk who are showing up. Because remember, even when Dr. King marched in Memphis, when the youth in the back of the parade caused the problem,
Right.
he got blamed for what they did.
But part the danger of that, that's why I say you have to have credible. So the danger that King got blamed for the riots, some disruptors in the back, they call themselves the intruders, that he only came back to Memphis to prove he could do a nonviolent march, and that's when they killed him. So what I'm saying is, you underscore my point. If we have credible people that we trust, then you can tell us who's doing this in Chicago.
And who's legitimate.
But if we don't have credible sources that we can trust, we don't know the setup from who's legitimate.
Right.
And that's why
anybody knows, if you're an organizer, when you come into a city, you're like, who real?
That's right.
Who real? I mean, listen, when I moved to Chicago, Hermene, that's my whole, people were coming at me and I'm sitting there going, are they legitimate? And then you know the game. And here's a perfect example when I'm talking about how we get played on. Associated Press does a story. Biden cuts $35 billion from HBCUs. Newsweek puts it on the cover.
That's right.
We wake up and several prominent pastors and black activists I know had the Newsweek cover on their social media condemning the administration. I knew it was a lie. I picked the phone up and said, take it down now. You are advancing a lie. I then went on the show and explained, first of all, here's where the 35 came from. Here's what the initial amount was. Here's what was for Hispanic Serving Institution for Black. And then showed the real information. And so if you allow that lie, Hermene, to go out, and so what I tell black folks is, when we see something, whether you're a preacher, you're an activist, your first response should be, where'd that come from? What's the source? And then let me confirm it with somebody who knows. And that's vital because if we react immediately emotionally, we actually become participants in the misinformation.
That's right.
So let me say something.
Hold on. Hermene, then you. Hermene, then you.
Listen now. All black ain't black. Okay? Now I'm gonna break this down in another kind of way. We just saw Trump interviewed by NABJ. Roland, I wrote about you. There was not a man on that panel. Trump don't need to be interviewed by some women. Trump needs to be interviewed by a brother. I suggested in the article that Roland Martin should have been on the stage and he should have been the interviewer. Now, I got calls, you got calls, Rufus. Are you at NABJ? Are you going to? And I said, NABJ is not for us. We are black-owned media. What does it mean? It means free. It means we are free to speak about the black community or whatever we want to speak about. There's no censorship, there's no producer, there's no team, there's no committee to say, I don't think you should say that. NABJ has employees who are black that work for mainstream corporate media. Lester Holt can't ask what Roland can, and he's a wonderful man. Okay, if you get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, Al on Good Morning Joe is very different than anybody on there. He brings up insights, he brings up history, and I just love to see the white men's faces just drop to say, did he say that? Or I didn't know that? Or why didn't I know that? And they just say, thank you, Reverend Al, because he done dropped a bomb on somebody. Okay, now, here's the second thing. We got an important election coming up. This election is not about a woman and a man. This election is not about a black woman and a white man. This election is about sanity and insanity. This election is about a person trying to take us backwards and to bring Hitler, Mussolini-like strategies into our country to take over our government so that we will never vote again. Listen to what this man is saying. There will be a bloodbath if I lose. You will never have to vote again. Blah, blah. Listen to what he is saying. This is about another America. Make America great again. Well, when it was great again, we might have been in slavery, picking cotton, as to what he's talking about. Be real clear. You got to do some research. You got to know who you are listening to. If you read Indigo, I am not the Tribune. That is not what I'm writing. That is not what Morgan is writing. We writing to our community, for our community, by our community, and about our community from a perspective that affects our community. And these are very, very, very important things to know. Everything black ain't black.
So before I go to Constance, I remember when we launched News One Now and TV One, we were the television press critics in LA, and I was asked the question. They said, well, how are you going to compete against Good Morning America and the Today Show? And I had the exact same view when I ran the Defender versus the Tribune and Sun-Times. I said, I'm not competing with them. I said, it's a bunch of stuff they cover I don't care about. I said, but they will never be able to out-black me.
That's right.
Which means on stuff that is ours, they can throw 20 people at it. They will never be able to out-black me, which is why when you see certain stories, Ben Crump will tell you, his clients have said, no, we're going to do Roland before we do the Today Show, because he's covering these stories every day. So this is where we have to understand in terms of how we have to be responding to the issues. But to the point of Morgan with social media, our audiences may be small, but how we're able to use those platforms to amplify what we do. Constance, go ahead.
So Rufus asked this great question earlier. What is the purpose of schools, right? And I do believe that there is a purpose for schools with regard to developing civic-minded, civically engaged leaders who can think critically. Those questions that you asked earlier, those 3 questions, like when you see something, like these are the ways to interrogate what you see. Guess where we talk about those questions? In schools. And so, like, I believe that there's going to be a lot of misinformation out here. Social media is not going anywhere. TikTok, for the time being, not going anywhere. And this is where our kids are going to absorb information, whether we like it or not. Whether we want to, create a different world, it doesn't matter. They're getting their information from these places. But those questions that you ask, We talk about these things in schools. And this is where we empower our students to really think deeply about what they're seeing and it helps them from going over there to going over here, you know? So I just wanna name that. And, I have the privilege of serving high schoolers, 12,000 high schoolers throughout the city of Chicago. And over the past few years, we've registered 4,000 students who are eligible. And we've done March to the Polls, because it's not just registering, you gotta get them to the polls too.
Right.
So there is a place. There are solutions for these, both in terms of action, but also like how we empower our students to think about these things.
Which is why Rufus, Reverend Sharpton mentioned earlier in terms of the importance of the black church. If there is a place where I believe the black church has failed, is that we left the freedom school concept. In Chicago, when they boycotted the schools, they said, no, y'all going to school, but you're gonna go to the freedom school at church. The reality is we're not getting civics in schools. Right. And this is where, for me, I believe, that's really what the Saturday morning workshop was about. It's really what y'all do with Nan every Saturday. Right. We have to actually, Rufus, create freedom schools to specifically teach civics, to say, you might think Danny Davis is your congressman, when in fact, no, it's actually Lauren Underwood. You need to understand who is actually your alderman and how these things work, because we need y'all to vote, but if I'm uninformed, I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I think that's one of the things that we have to be thinking about, creating freedom schools to teach civics in 2024 and beyond.
Let me say this, Roland,
Yes, Matt,
and it even goes beyond just what we do in schools. Back in 1983, when Harold Washington became mayor, there was a lot of engagement that we all had in politics.
And in fact, in that election, 85% of all eligible black folks voted. Which is, that was one of the highest numbers since the 64 Voting Rights Act. 85%.
Engaged and informed. For all of us who were reaching the profession at that time, Roland Burris started an organization called Young Executives in Politics. And we used to go and we would sit at his feet and we would learn much more about a number of the things that we're talking about now. So when I appeal to the audience, the question is, who's doing that? Who is bringing forth our young people? Who's bringing forth us?
Well, first of all, we keep saying young. It's a bunch of 40, 50, 60-year-old folk who are clueless. No, I'm sorry. I just want us to understand that, like literally. I mean, we have to understand, folks. Louisiana is 1/3 black. It just had an election. You literally had 26% turnout. Right. Atlanta, in 2 cycles, almost had a white mayor. So we have to understand that there are places where we have numbers, Matt. We're not maximizing our numbers because so many are checking out of the process. And so that's what I mean. We have to understand that we could literally flip elections all across the country if we voted at 65 to 70% of our capacity. The problem is, in many places, it's 20, 24, 28, 30, and we excited if it hits 35.
I'm gonna get back to cohesiveness though, and unity, and because I think, when you talk about schools, you talk about the church. Black relationships are in a crisis right now. What do I mean about that? The school, you and Rufus can talk about, this is the role of school and teaching. But then we got to get into this personal relationship between the parent and the teacher, which is at a crisis. There's no trust there. Y'all listen to my show, y'all know I talk about Mia. Mia's been teaching Chicago public schools for over 20 years, and she got cursed out by the first time in her career by a student's mother. The mother does not trust the school. She pulled her kid out of the school. We have these chasms that exist here in the church. You got people out there say, man, those churches don't represent me. Those preachers, man, they just do this. We creating separation. The teachers, man, they're not teaching our kids right. I'm going in there and I'm arguing with the teacher. Roland, you and Rufus are fraternities, right? There's a movement out here right now against the whole black fraternity and sorority community. Brothers, man, you see all the black fraternities and sororities, they're on this level, they don't represent us. We got to get that gap situation together. Students, teachers, Parents, they got to
Yeah,
be like this.
yeah, but-
Because you can't even teach civics to a child if her parents don't trust the people that you're teaching them civics about.
But I don't think you're going to be able to do that unless you confront the reality of our organizations moving outside of what's internal. What I mean by that is, and I've said this all around the country for years, Divine Nine represents more than 2 million members.
Right.
We're international, national, regional, state, grad, undergrad, and programming going down to elementary school. The question is, how often have you seen 100 to 200 individuals in black and gold, in pink and green, in red and white at the school board meeting, the city council meeting, the county commissioners meeting, in the state capitol? We have infrastructure. Listen, I keep asking the question. I have yet to see Prince Hall Masons and Eastern Stars mobilized for the election. What is the point of having black infrastructure if it's not being used to advance black interests?
So, but see, I would say is the reason why it's not being used is because it's not black trust.
No. But the point I'm raising is these are black organizations that have membership. So I think we have to, when we're talking about strategic voting, we have to be thinking differently. I think what we're not doing, Reverend, we're not challenging our black leaderships to say, are you spending more time on your insular business as opposed to the actual advancement of the black community at large?
No, I think you're absolutely right. And the whole idea that you raised about having freedom schools again falls right into that, because those are the structures that can do it. The problem is, going to his point about relationships, is that the so-called leadership, young and old, need to start relating and talking to each other about different roles that we can play.
Right.
And that this person does this person, because most of us don't even understand what each other's doing.
Right.
People ask, I had a guy ask me about a month ago, why do you do all of the funerals when somebody gets killed? I said, one, because the family called me. Usually, I never heard about it from media. And second, because we pay for the funerals. Why do we pay for the funerals? So most families don't expect they're going to have a funeral. And we try to help there. But we need the young activists to keep doing what y'all do. I didn't come to town to replace y'all. I come to enhance y'all. I got other stuff to do. But if we're not talking to each other, we think we're each other's competition or enemies, rather than sitting down and say, well, I disagree with you on this, Reverend Al. I disagree with you on this, activist. And then finding a way to bond that. Then you go, like you say, to the structures. Why are we not doing more about voting? Why the Divine Nine? It has to start with a dialogue with those of us that have our separate silos talking to the community that are not even talking to each other.
Rufus?
Let me say, Roland, we heard the challenge. You had 55,000 men on the Black Men, We Win with Black Men call the day after Vice President Harris became the person. And you made that same challenge there. You made the challenge when you were on my show to talk about it. I can tell you for sure, and I'm sure that the others have done the same thing, but in Kappa Alpha Psi, we have adopted a social action committee to do just those things. And that committee will work with the other Divine Nine to try and make sure that within this infrastructure, there is cohesiveness that moves us toward the purposes of which you speak. When we think about this, and I heard these conversations, and Divine Nine certainly falls within there, about black elites and the separation. And Matt, as you talk about us coming together, I then go back again to social media. And who is it that's pulling these things in, that's pulling us apart? That's throwing out the things that say these groups are not together, therefore nobody's paying them attention. That goes in and says the Democrats have never done anything for us, so why should I vote Democrat? Nobody's ever done anything for us, so why should I vote? That's coming from a lot of places that we didn't have back during the day, because social media, Russia, China,
right,
whoever is able to put this information out there. But we are more collected than we otherwise would see. The unity is there. We just can't keep hearing from other places that it's not and follow that method, but follow what's really happening.
Well, so when you made your point about, I'm coming right here, but you made your point about that Win with Black Men call. So I had someone who challenged me on that because The other calls, when they raised the money, it all went to the campaign. So a person came to me and said, you know, folks are upset because y'all did it differently. I said, oh, I know, because it was my idea. Now understand what we did. When we raised that $1.4 million on that call, we specifically said half will go to the campaign, but half will actually go to black male groups who are doing on-the-ground activation. So the person said, well, y'all did it different from everybody else. I said, I know. That was on purpose, because I have complained that part of the problem is that our grassroots groups are rarely funded.
That's right.
I said, so why am I going to raise money to send it to somebody
Right.
and then beg them to send some back, when it was like, no, we going to cut that sucker in half. Y'all going to get half. And 146 groups applied for grants for that $750,000.
Right.
But that's what I mean by we have to be thinking differently. And so I had no problem saying we did it differently, and I'm saying we're going to do it again, because I can't complain about one thing and then not create a solution on that very issue. Morgan, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you did that, actually. I've listened into a couple of the Win with Black Women calls just to see what they were talking about. And I asked them, what are our demands? You have us fundraising, but we haven't seen a platform yet. And we're also not going to the candidate with saying, okay, we're going to provide this amount of funding, and we want to see this agenda for Black people pushed forward. And that's one thing that I'm looking for our Black leaders to do. The truth is, a lot of the groups that we've been mentioning, they've been platforms for us to assimilate into white culture, get corporate power, and move around and have position. But, you know, we have Black leadership here in Chicago. We have a Black police superintendent who can't get the people who are connected to the Oath Keepers and white supremacist groups off the force. So it doesn't matter if we have position, if we don't have power. We need to be moving and thinking about our collective freedom and not just individuals.
So I'm gonna give you something that folk may not be aware of. First of all, the Win with Black Women call, they've been doing it every Sunday for 4 years. They started in April of 2020 with the express purpose of pushing Biden to select then Senator Kamala Harris to be VP. That was the purpose of the call. They achieved that. But let me explain to you what happened from those same sisters that people may not realize. When all the calls after June 27th came out to replace Biden, y'all might notice, everybody kept saying, we need an energetic, young nominee. They kept saying, we need an open convention process. They were never mentioning her name. But let me explain to y'all what happened. Those same Black women were the ones on the rules committee. What they then did was they used the rules to block other folk from running.
And to block the open convention.
Right. So I need y'all to understand. So I understand your point.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, but that was a direct result of those sisters for 4 years organizing. They understood the power structure. And so when Joe Manchin goes, I might run, they went, you can't run because you're not a Democrat.
That's right.
So they used, so what I'm saying is the brilliance of those sisters, they weren't just meeting to meet. They actually were infiltrating the levers of power in the party. And so when you had Leah Daltrey, Mignon Moore, Joteka Edie, and others, when the time came when they were trying to take, because understand, because I know what I heard, they were trying to take out Biden and Harris. What happened was 1,400 Black women, and they actually wanted 10,000, when they released that letter saying, no, we ain't having this, the Democratic Party faced an upheaval from Black people who were positioned by saying, try that open convention process and see what's about to happen.
Right. That's right.
So that's why when he dropped out and she began to make the phone calls, Black Power coalesced immediately, and the last point, They tried y'all should thank the Congressional Black Caucus. Why? Because the Congressional Black Caucus, only one member broke ranks and called for an open convention. So the reason she is the nominee, because black women used the power, and the Congressional Black Caucus said, y'all are not gonna overlook that sister. So we need to understand what happened.
I'm just hoping y'all can provide some insight on the platform.
No, I'm just giving people. I get the platform.
I think the point is that what you said is right, because Leah Daughtry and Donna Brazile and them called all of us, so everybody got in line. But the point is that if we do, like she's talking about, we have, I don't know about the black chief here, I'm glad to hear that, but you've got black chiefs all over this country that fight for bad cops when we come in, worse than some of the whites. When you don't have blacks that do that, we've got to be willing to say they either don't have the power or you're on the wrong side. Because blacks cannot see leadership as a celebrity status.
Right.
They have to see it as a service.
You got to do something.
And what are you becoming a black leader for? Because you may be trying to be a black leader against our agenda and want to have whatever expense, but if we are not talking to each other, we don't have the right information.
Right.
So I think that fact that those sisters who did exactly what you said, connected with the caucus, connected with those of us that were talking to
folk don't know the cause that were happening.
That's exactly right. But at the same time, it needs to be down to a local basis, so we're not tricked into dealing with just because somebody's our color, they our kind.
So I'm gonna say this before the next panelists jump in, because it's tied to this, because we're discussing strategic voting. And I can't be in Chicago not say this. The reason those sisters were in place to do that is because of Reverend Jesse Jackson.
That's right.
That's right.
Reverend Jackson taught them, if you don't know the rules, then you can't play the game.
That's right.
So, and listen, folk, I deal with this all the time. Folks say all kind of stuff about Reverend, and let me be real clear. Between Reverend Jackson, Ron Brown, Dr. Ron Walters, Harold Ickes, after 1988, they literally changed the rules.
Right.
There is no Obama in 08.
Right.
Unless the rules are changed in 1988. This is numbers. Democrats used to have winner take all. In 08, Hillary won Ohio, Pennsylvania, Texas, California, and if they included Michigan and Florida. Under the old rules, she would have been the nominee. But Reverend them changed the rules. They then put in those black folks on committees to now be in position of power.
Right.
So him running in 88, and all those sisters work for him, put them in position in 2024 to hold the line, and that's how she's a nominee. So when we talk about strategic voting, we have to be thinking beyond the election and then maintaining the coalitions, Hermene, after the election. You know, Reverend has to go, so I want you to make a point here, and then he can make a final point.
Roland,
we got to maintain those groups after the election is over to get what we want. Go.
What Reverend did, what Reverend Jackson did, we say no Obama if not Reverend Jackson. Go back one.
No, Reverend Jackson, not Shirley
Clinton.
Chisholm. Right.
No Clinton. Clinton is the first one who used those rules. Then, when Reverend opened up not just the process, but the DNC.
Yes.
Mignon was a secretary. That was Willie Barrow's secretary. Okay? Donna Brazile. All of that group that you're talking about.
She's not Al Gore's campaign manager.
That's
unless
right.
she works with Reverend Jackson.
All of that group.
But not only did they change the rules, they put them on the rules committee.
That's right.
And they came out of that movement, and that is just a fact. But again, it is because the mission was the objective,
right,
not the position.
Right.
And what we are trying to deal with now is people that want the position with no mission. And we've got to make sure the people we position are part of our mission.
hold on. And with that, Reverend Sharpton has to go to his next engagement.
Right.
Reverend, we appreciate it. So, I
got a question.
I'm coming to you.
I got a question.
I'm coming to you. So I want people to understand why the first hour has gone this way. It's because when we talk about strategic voting, we only talk about elections. But if you notice, the conversation we're having is what you do when the election is over. And so that's the other piece there. We can't execute a platform or an agenda if we're not in constant organization and mobilization to actually do it. And so that's what I want us to be also thinking about. I've always said the election is the end of one process and the beginning of another. So we spend tons of energy, man, getting people out to vote. But the day the election is over, we're like, all right, we good. No. The other folk, they are staying mobilized and organizing to drive the agenda.
Let me ask you, isn't our bigger problem, though, with strategic voting, is that we have a large black population that just don't trust black politicians? Isn't that really the problem with strategic? Because
no, that's not the problem.
Because we've got a large percentage of our people that just do not trust black politicians.
No, that's not the problem.
That is a big problem here in Chicago.
But hold up. If there are a large group of people who do not trust black politicians, then that tells me that black politicians are not properly communicating on a regular basis with their constituents.
Agreed.
About so again
Whatever
though,
it is.
the black politician, it is on them to be holding town halls. It's on them to be engaging their people, educating afterwards. But it's incumbent upon our black organizations to be applying the pressure to them afterwards. Andrew Young told me this here before. I'm gonna go to Constance next. Andrew Young told me this. He got elected mayor. The next day, the civil rights folk in Atlanta was protesting outside his house. And he was like, what are y'all doing? He said, y'all my friends. They went, oh, Andy, we still friends, but you not a man. You now have the power. So we got to make you do what you said you were going to do. I long said, and the Obama folks didn't like it, and they still mad at me at it. I don't care. I said, everybody else left the inauguration parade, and we stayed, and we were like, oh my God, we got a first black family. Everybody else left. They executed an agenda while we were so happy having the first. I kept saying, but he's also the 44th. So part of this, to Constance, to his point, is if we're not challenging black leadership to do what they said they were going to do, then that's what happens. That's why I'm saying we need our organizations to stay mission-driven and in the game.
And let me say this real quick. But Roland, how do we get the people who don't understand politics to understand that black politicians are doing something for them?
No.
Hold on.
I just told you.
No, hold on. Let me just explain this. You just broke down how the Rules Committee prevented some Democrats from leapfrogging over Kamala.
Yes.
Congressional Black Caucus, you just outlined it. You understand that. Now we understand that. But the average black voter out there is saying, Black Caucus ain't doing nothing for us.
No.
They ain't doing nothing for us. And you just said,
and that's why.
You just said they just made sure that this black woman does not get passed over.
And that's why I had him on my show. That's why the Triibe has to write about him. That's why Internet has to write about him. And we have to be using social media to push that narrative. If you allow the mainstream narrative to dominate,
that's that trust I keep getting back to, though, y'all.
Constance, and I'm going to go to Bishop. Constance.
Can I say something? So, we always have these group discussions on we should this or we should that. Many of you in this audience raised your hands when asked, did you read Project 2025? We need a Black Project 2025. We need a manifesto of our very own in the detail. I read all 920 pages. That's what I did on July 4th. I started and I couldn't stop because it was like this, are these people serious? We need a Project 2025 of our very own, and whoever is running for whatever they are running for, the document should be done. We keep talking about reparations. If we don't get reparations now, just forget it. Go home, go to sleep, and don't talk about it no more. Because the politics line up for it now in some shape, form, or fashion.
In order to get a Project 2025, you have to have an organization that actually is driving that, which then means you then have to fund that very organization to actually do.
Roland.
No. Follow me here.
We have it.
No. And what I'm saying is,
He's in the Heritage Foundation.
Y'all built a statue of Dr. King in Washington. You could fund it.
I got it.
Cappers, y'all could fund it. AKAs, we could fund it. Churches, we could fund it.
I know that.
We can do it. We can do it, and we need to do it.
Which is why by having this conversation, I want folk in the audience who are members of all these organizations, that's why I keep saying, to think now differently. So when they go back to their chapter meetings and they say, are we only discussing our stuff or we brought this conversation? Bishop Brazier, you called us several months ago and you wanted to do this conversation. And again, the point about strategic voting, that means you're putting thought into it. And it's not just, I'm just doing it out of, because we just do it. Why, what were you seeing? What were you hearing why you said this conversation had to take place?
What I was seeing is a warfare that was taking place. And we've been through this before. It's not like we haven't seen this before. We saw it in the 1960s, so we know what the warfare looks like. And going back to what Matt said, there are a lot of interests. Everybody's got an interest. And the issue is not that you have a different interest. The issue is, how do you reconcile your interests? And so the whole idea for this strategic voting is to begin to narrow down our interests, not our grievances. It's not about whether I trust every politician. It is how do I leverage every politician? That's the issue.
Even the ones that I did not vote for, but who won?
And there must be institution, strategic institution, along with strategic thought that gets us to where we are, regardless of your age. So whether you are Gen Z or whether you are a baby boomer or beyond, it does not matter. What matters is do we operate on the same understanding that we must protect our liberties, we must protect all the things that we fought for. Otherwise, we go backwards. So it doesn't matter whether you trust a politician, it doesn't matter who the mayor is or anything else. Do we have an agenda? Are we organized to address the agenda? And then what I heard today is, how do we now teach that agenda? And much of that is done by people on this panel. They do publishing and things of that nature. But there has to be a place of that is trusted. And right now, the place that is trusted is still the church. Now, when you go back to what Roland first started with, is that you always have to know that when we make progress, there's always somebody else who wants to come up behind us and take away our progress. So I'm an affirmative action baby. I'm proud of it, right? I took full advantage of the government who made the corporation I work for, made them hire me and allowed me to be able to compete. And I want you to know I competed very well. So I had no problem with that. But when the Jerry Falwells and the other ones, then they created what is known as the moral majority. And it doesn't take long before you begin to see creep. And then, you know, when President Obama was in, then you had the Tea Party. Now we got MAGA. Now we got all kind of disinformation. You need to stop and not think about what your grievance is. You got to think about what is in your best interest and the interest of your family, the interest of your children and your children's children. And I'll say this and I'll close. The reason why I'm doing this is because 16 years ago when I became the pastor, I made a commitment that I would not be, that I would be the pastor of the same kind as my father. Not my father, but the pastor like him, that I would love my congregation.
Right.
That I was not going to build another building, we were going to build people.
Right.
But the critical piece is that I would not be the pastor, I'm not just the pastor of the living, I'm also the pastor of the unborn. And that is how we must think.
Right. Multi-generational. Rufus, we talk about strategic voting. I was sitting here thinking when he mentioned Tea Party MAGA. Thad Cochran was a Republican United States Senator. Thad Cochran was forced into a runoff against a Tea Party Republican. Black people, because it's open primary, black folks voted in the runoff for Thad Cochran to keep the Tea Party guy out. Now, that was a perfect example of black voters going, all right, Republican, sane Republican, crazy Republican. Black people said, we in Mississippi, it's going to be a Republican, but we gonna make sure it's a sane Republican and the crazy. So they crossed and voted in the MAGA folks were upset, but it was the rules. That's how Thad Cochran won. So when Loretta Lynch was waiting to be confirmed for the United States Senator, they were blocking her confirmation. So the sisters would go on to Capitol Hill protesting, pushing. I was like, where the brothers at? Why no black men marching on Capitol Hill in support of Loretta Lynch? So Pastor Jamal Bryant, Jeff Johnson, myself, we called it ourselves. So 200 black men showed up. We roll up, we had 2 members of Congress waiting on us. And there was probably more security waiting on us than there was on January 6th. Because they were like, where did these dudes come from? Didn't nobody know, wasn't no press release. We just rolled up on there. So we go to the office of Thad Cochran and we walk in, and so it's about 60 or 70, and we pack the office. And we say we want to meet with Senator Cochran. Well, his schedule is full. We ain't leaving. All right. We packed, and so like we literally wouldn't leave for about 45 minutes, and he finally met. So when we met with him, we said, listen, you have made a decision. We hope you vote the right way. And I said, let me remind you, you're only in this position because black people crossed over and voted. That's what I'm talking about, how we have to be looking at elections. And even if our choices are two people who we may be opposed to, somebody is going to win. But that was a conscious decision black folks made to keep a Tea Party out. That's what we're talking about, how we got to be thinking about how we vote and use our voting power.
And important in that was not the decision not to vote because neither of them is for us.
Right.
That was strategic thinking and strategic voting. What I wanted to get in and say, Roland, as we think about this, when Barack Obama won the first term, and we were all out freezing in Washington, D.C. on that morning, freezing, while we were out there celebrating,
they were planning.
Mitch McConnell and the others were meeting at the Cactus Club and deciding he is going to be a one-term president.
Yes.
We will vote no against everything that he wants. We will do everything in our power to keep him only there. They also went, and you look across the United States, and they started voting in the down ballot races, down ballot from president, and started putting people in the gubernatorial races.
Yep.
They started winning governorships. They started winning all these other races. So when we start to think about...
So that was in 2010. And all of those folks who voted in 2008, many of them did not vote in 2010. I was sitting on the set of CNN that night. 16 state legislatures flipped to total GOP control. And it was immediate the next year. That's when they started passing voter suppression laws.
That's right. And when President Obama talked about the shellacking, It was more than just President Obama and the Democrats holding these places. This was bad for all of us. This is where we've got to be engaged, involved, knowledgeable, pushing and prodding all the time. And so all the places that we look now, and there's been more conversation more recently, we've certainly talked about the Electoral College and what that means and how you can win the popular vote but still lose the presidency because of the way this was put together because of us, slaves, right? And so now we've got to understand what's in play, where we vote, and whether it's us here in Chicago or our folks in Mississippi, we've got to make sure that we're engaged, we're involved, we're understanding, and we're looking longer down the road in order to do that. One more point and I'll stop. When Donald Trump ran back in 2016, and he talked about, he had a list of judges he was going to appoint. You know, other than the judges he sat before, he didn't know anything about judges. It was a Federalist Society that they had gone through and vetted all these judges that are now coming through and making these decisions that impact all of us and impact him as well. They were playing the long game. When we start to think about the strategies that we should be employing, we've got to think down the road, just as these sisters did that you talked about on the Sunday call.
Well, and a lot of those people, and a lot of those folks, I've had more black people complaining to me about Biden and Harris, and I explained to them. They have approved 200 federal judges. 58 of the 200 federal judges are African American. 37 black women, 21 black men. Biden-Harris appointed more black women to the appeals court than all previous presidents combined. Now,
critical in a lot of those.
So again, this is where, Morgan, I want to go to you. I'm trying to explain how we have to be educating our folks. So when somebody goes, Morgan, man, I hear all that, but I don't care about no judges. No, but we got to understand, that's an actual real response. Our response has to be, it was a federal judge who said, release those juveniles out of Angola prison in Louisiana, and 80% of them were black. It was a federal judge that ruled on various issues. And so we have, for those who don't know, we have to explain to people what this means, because the president's there max 8 years. A federal judge can be there until they die. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we have to really do the work to educate people that this is beyond voting for the president. There's things that we can do every day to help better our lives. So many people come to us and talk about reparations, for instance. Do y'all know that here in Chicago, reparations were won for John Bird's torture survivors? They got $5.5 million. They got a monument. Survivors got money. Chicago organizers did that. We can replicate their strategy and go to every institution that has harmed us and say, hey, we've researched the ways that you've benefited from slave labor, from land theft, from whatever it is, and you owe us money. And we're going to stay here and we're going to fight until we get it.
And the reason you need those federal judges, because when you challenge that, there's going to be a lawsuit, and you're going to want some federal judges in place to agree with your position.
Exactly. So we have to start communicating that civic engagement is more than voting, but voting is just a tool that we use that can help us with our other organizing strategies.
During Black Lives, after the death of George Floyd, Matt, it was very interesting. There was a brother, I was reading his article, and he said, man, I'm sick of these politicians. They not going to do nothing. I ain't going to vote, but I'm going to march. And I was like, well, I said, now I'm confused. Because if you're marching to change policy, the root word of policy is the same as the root word of politician. I said, you just going for a walk. And so part of this, when we talk about strategic voting, is getting folks to understand you have to tie marching, protests, lawsuits, and voting directly into policy changes. But that's why I mean there has to be a massive education program in our community in using every lever, using family conversations, using chat discussions, using all of this. Otherwise, we're complaining about stuff and it's staying the same.
And you know what, we have mastered that part, right? We're very good at, and we have good reason to complain. No other race of people should be bitter more than black people, right? But just because we can be bitter doesn't mean that we should be bitter, because it does stunt our progress. I'm gonna keep getting back to this gap. You talked about families, and that's really where it has to start. Roland, the Talented Tenth was about what? Black people trusted the most educated part of our race, that they were going to do what was best for all.
Now, W.B. Du Bois wrote about that, but in 1948, W.B. Du Bois spoke at the Boule, Sigma Pi Phi Boule Convention and condemned them because he said that wasn't what I was talking about.
Okay, cool.
So the man who wrote about the Talented Tenth condemned them for their failure to actually put in the work.
Right.
I'll send you the speech because I got it on my phone.
No, but the point I'm making is, I don't think today the uneducated, unhooked up black crowd, they don't trust us. They don't trust us that we have their back.
I can't trust something.
And I think that's what we got to try to figure out.
No. But remember what I said earlier.
Get them to believe that,
remember,
no.
I can't get them to believe something unless they see me. So the point I'm making is, if you put on your black and gold and 500 brothers show up at the school board meeting, all of a sudden it's like they at the school board meeting. But if I never see pink and green at the county board meeting, and I don't see blue and gold at the state capitol, then I never see you. And so then when they criticize you, y'all ain't doing nothing. Oh, really? We changed this school policy. Where were you? We changed this city policy. Where were you? That's what I'm saying. We have massive organizations, but our people who don't belong to them are not seeing us in the streets. And if they see us, they're gonna say, "What y'all doing? We trying to keep the school open."
Yeah, but
so we have to force our leadership out of their comfort zone to connect with regular, ordinary folk.
Well, let me ask
Constance.
We do. We have these massive organizations. I'm a proud member of Delta Sigma Sorority Incorporated, among others. But we have no collective strategy. Like, that's the thing. It's like, we would be so much stronger if there was an organization or a person galvanizing all of these different groups towards a common goal. You know, one of the things that I love about this forum is, you know, this is being led by the Apostolic Church of God. You know, there's a place for schools, there's a place for churches, there's a place for Greek letter organizations, but if we're all working in our silos and doing different things, then we're going to be not as effective as if we were all working together.
First of all, at April 3rd, 1968, Dr. King's last sermon in Mason Temple, he specifically talked about the collective. He said black people individually we are individually poor, yet collectively represent one of the largest economies in the world. He said if we move as a collective, we can make changes. But here's the piece where I've always maintained this, why I don't waste a lot of energy on the collective. I can't get 10 groups to move if I don't get 2. So I think what happens, Bishop, is we wait, we call a meeting and we like, well, who not here? No, I'm not focused on who didn't show up. I'm gonna focus on who did show up. And now we gonna move. And if the other folk wanna catch up, one, we not stopping the train. You gotta catch up. I think that's where we lose focus. We wait for the big mass meeting for everybody to agree versus saying, look, you got a problem with this? Okay, I got a problem with this. Okay, listen, that black men's call, that came together in 24 hours. 5 brothers, Khalil Thompson, Bakari Sellers, Mike Blake, Quentin James, and myself. Mike called me and said, hey, we want you to handle the streaming. I said, I got logistics. I said, y'all ain't got to worry about it. We got everything else. It was put together because, one, no egos, and we said, let's make it happen. But it was 5. Let me tell you what happened. Cats started hitting us up. Hey, can we have our name on the flyer? No. Flyer's done. This ain't about no name on the flyer. Well, I got an email list. Good, send it to them. We shut down the ego because we said, this ain't about the ego. And so This is why, if we talk about, again, strategic voting, if we change our thinking and stop waiting for the big meeting and just say, if 5 show up, I'm gonna work with 5, but I'm gonna ask the 5 to bring 1 next month. Now we got 10. And next month, I'm gonna ask the 10 to bring 1, now we got 20. I'm gonna ask the 20 to bring 1, now we at 40. I'm not tripping if we don't have 500, because the Bible tells you how you can do a whole lot with a few people to win wars. We keep waiting on the big meeting as opposed to doing the work.
Yeah, and I do believe that, well, going back when we're talking about it being about the mission versus the position, right? And so that's why you start with the 2 and then build to the 3 and the 4 and the 5. You get the mission-oriented people together and you build from that, and then people will see what you're doing and they'll want to be a part of it.
And when they see the work, they actually respond. We're gonna have final comments. I want to start with, since he spoke last and he was complaining, so I let the Kappa go ahead and talk first.
Well, I wasn't complaining. I was just recognizing.
I'm just messing with you. But I don't have to hit you with that ace. See,
don't make me.
Your Kappa knees don't work. Take a seat. Take a seat. Y'all saw he sat down, huh? Go ahead, Rufus.
It's always going to come to that.
All love.
A few things I do want to take into consideration this last conversation, because it's interesting. If you look in a whole lot of the places and a lot of the leadership places, you actually do find members of the Divine Nine who are in those spaces. This has been a wonderful gathering, wonderful conversation, and what is critically important is that it doesn't stop here. And so for each of us who is here, and I mentioned a few times in my comments how we need to make certain that we take this to our younger brood, because they're the ones who really need to know what we know. There's so much history in our background. In Africa, it was the seniors who brought the information. And so often those people are discarded when those are the ones who can really share. So we can't wait until somebody asks us. We have to take the message out. If we're going to be strategic, let's do that. There's a reason that each of you came here tonight. And I hope somewhere in here, we got something that we can take and share. I certainly did. And I'm looking forward to sharing that information broadly, widely, and continuing this conversation in whatever ways that we can. Because what's in front of us, and Hermene mentioned this upcoming election, we didn't talk about it directly. The church is not, what did you say? You can't be political? The church is not political. I am. And I want to be very clear that Donald Trump cannot be president. I asked very specifically about Project 2025 because there is nothing in there that benefits us. When I asked who knew about it, who read it, most hands went up. Share it. Everybody doesn't know. Share it widely. We need to know that. And we've got to push out that information so we know what we're up against. It would change. Look, we're not going back. We're not going back. And it only works if we make it work.
Hermene?
So, first of all, I want to thank Dr. Brazier for pulling us together. In 1865, Chicago held its first Democratic National Convention. The candidate that was running was the Black Horse. They said he didn't have a chance. There was a newspaper man from the Tribune who said, "Yes, you do. Yes, you can." His name was Abraham Lincoln. That election was important. It changed history. We're at the same place now with a Democratic National Convention that they could not have imagined. We are the Tribune. We are that media force to push a candidate forward and to tell a story. This election is about the integrity of our government. And it needs to stay in place as is. Trump cannot change this country, our world, our integrity of our government, our three branches of government. One of the things, you will not see this discussion on ABC or NBC or CBS. One of the things that needs to be said that is not said, Trump is a media-created monster.
No, it's fact.
The media, the white corporate media,
New York tabloids
created
Donald Trump.
a Frankenstein named Trump. Because he wasn't challenged. He's allowed to lie, and they don't challenge it. Insulting, preposterous, that you would say to President of the United States, you were not born here, and you should not. The whole birthing thing should have been checked, should have been canceled, should have been denied, should have been, why are we reporting this? Newspapers have editors. There are producers of these shows. They play rating games. They play exploitation games. They play games. This is not a game. We are as serious as we have ever been in this country. This is probably, we say this at every election, but here we go, it's true now. This is the most important election that we have ever experienced. It is about us now, but more important than about us now, it is about the future of this country. This man has changed the Republican Party to something that we don't even know. We have to keep three branches of government as the check and balance because that is what America is. We are not a dictatorship.
Right.
We are not autocratic. We do not want Hitler to live here. We don't want that. We don't want Project 2025. If we want to be very selfish about it, it does not include us, it excludes us completely and totally. You gotta understand this because that's what you're voting for or that's what you are voting against. Young people, you can make this election happen. You can make determination as to who the next president of the United States is. And we've got to do it right. We don't have time to do this wrong. We ain't got time to come back the next 4 years. It might be Pritzker or it might be this one. The time is now.
Constance.
Some of you might be aware of the fact that there is a panel about strategic voting that's happening in parallel in another room with our 40 and under group. So I say that because we really need to make a concerted effort to meet our young people where they are. And we need to be intentional about creating spaces to have this conversation, to speak their language. You know, working in schools, I hear so many negative things about our kids. And I'm like, y'all can say whatever you want, but guess what? They're ours. And they're our future. And so I just want to encourage us to think about how we can be intentional about making spaces for our students and for our kids to have similar conversations. And when we see them doing things that on the surface looks a little wild and crazy to us, you know what? How about we pick up the mirror and ask us, why are they doing that? Because oftentimes the things that they're doing is a reflection of the decisions and the misconceptions and the perceptions we have of them.
Matt?
You know, real quick and real simple, I agree with Hermene. We need our own Project 2025, and it needs to start with Black love and Black trust. I think that's simple, to be honest with you guys. When that parent trusts the teacher, the child benefits from that. When that child goes through school and trusts all his teachers because he sees his mother and father trusting his teachers, that kid graduates. When that kid graduates, we all benefit from that. But it really starts with love and trust, man. I used to argue with people every day on my show, and I used to look forward to arguing the next day, and then I started ending every show with saying, I love you guys to pieces. And you know what I started getting back? They love me. They love me back. And if we can do that, man, just think in terms of love and trust, we'll be all right.
Morgan.
Thank you again to Roland Martin and Pastor Brazier for this invitation. This has been such a nourishing conversation. I started the Tribe in 2017 with a mission to reshape the narrative of Black Chicago because I didn't like the way that corporate media was talking about us. In a country that is a global empire that has benefited from our stolen labor and stolen land, there is no way that Black people are the most dangerous people in this country. Our image is not violence. We have contributed to this culture. We have contributed to this country in ways that they will never, ever say. And I believe that by reshaping the narrative, we can really reshape the world. So I hope that you all tune into the Tribe. We are TRIIBE. We will be inside the DNC, and we will also be in the streets, uplifting the voices of the people and what they are fighting for. They are fighting to end the violence in Israel. They are fighting for a benefits agreement for the communities that are going to be displaced by the Obama Library. They are fighting for an end to police brutality and so much more. So if you want to understand what's going on with social movements in Chicago, please subscribe to us and help us grow, because in order for us to be truth tellers, we need to be funded by the people.
So a final comment. So Shauna Prince, who used to produce for me at TV1, she been texting me, yeah, you know I was gonna call you out. She's like, you keep saying bishop is doctor. I said, you know Black people call every preacher bishop. Like, and if you ain't no preacher and you just know the word, be like, what up, bishop? So Bishop, go ahead and close this out. Shauna, 9. I'm gonna have a final comment, but you're gonna be the last speaker. Go ahead.
Let's give Roland Martin a big hand. Now let us give all our panelists a big hand. We thank the Lord for them. Roland, this has really achieved exactly what I was looking for, where true voices can be heard. This is going to be edited. It's going to be broadcast over WCIU. It's going to be on our website. It has been, many of you all have already used your platforms in order to distribute this. I've asked 2 of my pastoral friends, one in Atlanta and one in Detroit, to do the same thing.
There you go.
And when they see not just the panel, not just the content, but when they see that there is an interest that people have in the notion that they can be strategic, that they can actually do something beyond their grievance, because you can have a grievance.
That's right.
Right, but you can't do nothing about your grievance, but you still got a grievance.
That's right.
But when we vote our interest, that is when we can change things.
That's it.
So I thank the Lord for each and every one of you, for this panel, for Roland Martin, and now I'm just asking everybody to stand, and we're going to go
Hold on, before you get a benediction, hold on. I got you.
All right.
So when we talk about, I don't like when we do gatherings and then folk don't understand how literally one person who makes a fundamental decision can alter history. So in December 2017, when Alfred Liggins said they were canceling News One Now, people were upset. Literally as he was telling me that, I was already planning. To understand, so we're 6 years old September 4th, and it goes to what Morgan was talking about. It goes to what Constance has done starting the schools. It goes to what Hermene did starting Indigo. It goes to what Rufus did transitioning from public schools and doing radio, same with Matt. It goes with your father starting churches. Don't think that one person's decision cannot have enormous impact. Right now, there are 961 people who are watching the Apostolic YouTube channel. There are more people watching than the people sitting in the room. On my Black Star Network, there are 4,000 watching. Now, folk told me this would not work. They said, go back to CNN. I said, no, I want to own and control. We started with $350,000 of my own money and one sponsor. We're now 6 years in. Why am I saying that? We've built something to 1.3 million followers on YouTube. Last month we did 25 million views. Because I didn't listen to critics who said it won't work. There are more people sitting in this church than was sitting in the church in Montgomery in 1955. This election is an election of margins. You know people in Georgia. You know people in Pennsylvania. You know people in Michigan, in Wisconsin, in North Carolina, Arizona, Nevada. This election could be determined by several thousand votes. So every person in here, you should be saying, who are the friends I know, who are the church members I know, who are the family members I know. I got social media. If you collectively use your social media to drive out messages, you can reach millions. So every person sitting here literally has the power to decide the next president, the next United States senator. But leaving here, you have to decide if you're going to do the work over the next 80 some odd days, or you're going to complain and hope somebody else does it. Doc, now you can get a benediction, Doc.
One of the things he said is no to CNN and yes to his independence. That means something, you all, because at CNN, they're going to either cut him off or say no or tell you what to say or to tell you what you can't say. I want you all to look at Indigo Studio this year. October 5, we come on NBC, and October 6, we go to Peacock. We're also on PBS. I built a distribution of about 3 to 5 million people. Okay, but look at the content. You will not hear the conversation that we just had. You will not see this on corporate media. Understand this media game, y'all, because it is a serious one. You've got to understand it. You've got to appreciate. Appreciate Morgan with Triibe. Appreciate me with Indigo. These newspapers, the New York Times 2 years ago decided to capitalize the N, the B in Black. My first editorial in '89 was, we will capitalize the B in Black. So I say, it took the New York Times 20 years to catch up with me. And before that, Du Bois wrote the New York Times and the Washington Post, and would y'all please capitalize the N in Negro. Now that all by itself is monumental because it says what they thought of us. By any English measure, the N in Negro should have been capitalized as a proper noun, and the B in Black should have been capitalized as a proper noun. That tells you a mouthful. That tells you history. That tells you perspective. Listen to what we are saying to you as Black media, as an authentic voice. It's important. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And finally, before the bishop, Dr. Grazer.
I didn't open this for a new round of talk. Man, go on.
As long as you've now told me all those other people who aren't here are watching, I need to make sure people know that WVON has been around for 61 years, informing, educating, and exciting our audiences. I am on from 6 to 9 a.m. every weekday morning. Matt is on from 1 to 3. Please check us out.
And
Now the benediction.
I would say this. There was a
tell them your
before we do the
broadcast.
benediction. There was a columnist. His name was Lou Palmer.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And at the end of his radio session, he would say one of two things. He would say, "Now go run and tell that." But then he'd also say, it's enough to make a Negro turn black. Now what you have heard, go run and tell that, because what you heard is enough to make a Negro turn black. Shall we stand? I want you to grab somebody's hand. Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, in your name, we give you honor, glory, and thanks for your goodness and your mercy. We thank you, Lord, for the collective ideas and the understandings that we have achieved. Now, Lord, we pray your strength upon us, Lord, that you will give us as one wisdom beyond our years. We pray, Lord, that you will strengthen us and keep us. Lord, that we will first call on you. Lord, because we know that when we seek you first, then all these other things will be added unto us. So now, Lord, we ask that you will bless the saints. Bless us, O Lord, who have gathered here today. And we ask that you will provide for us traveling mercies as we leave this place, but never ever from your presence. And we will forever give you the praise and the glory and all the honor in Jesus' name. Let us say amen. Amen. May God bless you.
That was so wonderful. Thank you so much.
This telecast is copyrighted by the Apostolic Church of God for the private use of our audience. Any other use of this telecast, pictures, descriptions, or accounts of the church service without consent from the